Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I want to thank you and welcome you for being here today. My name is Michael Summers. I'm a loaned executive from the Department of Motor Vehicles, and I'm going to be providing you the training today as key campaigners as we enter the campaign in 2013. This is actually my third tour of duty. I did this in 2008 last year, and I had the good fortune. I guess I'm doing an okay job because my director asked me to come back this year. And I'm very excited about it because I've been involved in nonprofits for over 25 years, and I know the value, as you do, about what value they bring to our communities. And again, I want to thank you and actually congratulate you on being here today. And I want to mention, because I want to mention to our audience that this is actually being videotaped today, and it will be placed on our CSECC website so that those around the state who might not get training have an opportunity to actually see the training. So I want to welcome our guests from anywhere around the state who might be viewing this. I fully appreciate there's one of three ways that you may have brought you here today. So what I want to do is just a little virtual polling. Well, virtual, I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't physically raise your hand, you just virtually raise your hand. So some of you I know would have come here today enthusiastically, you volunteered your services, you know the value of nonprofits, you know the value of the CSECC campaign, and you openly volunteered yourself. So for those that applies, virtually raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Then there are some of you that, you were asked, would you volunteer for this? And yes, you might be busy and you got things going on, but you just know the value. You said, yes, I'll do this assignment. So for those that applies, would you virtually raise your hand? Thank you. Then there's a third category that actually I learned this term last year. And I was a rhetoric major from UC Davis. So I have, kind of liberal use of the English language. I learned the term voluntold. You were basically, what's your name, ma'am? Yes, Sue. Sue, I'm your manager. We've got a CSECC assignment. We've got training on this date, August 29th at 9 a.m. Please show up. Thank you very much. We're voluntold, and you're here today. Well, let me just say this. Whatever brought you here today, I'm really hoping that by the end of this training, that I have instilled either some enthusiasm that's already there or some additional enthusiasm about how important this assignment is and your role to it, as Jeff was mentioning. And that no matter what brought you here today, what you have a choice is how are you going to show up, how are you going to leave this room today and accept this assignment. And I'm hoping that by the end of this training, I'm going to give you not only the technical aspects of your job, but really more critically, more the from the heart about what this campaign is all about and how it touches all of us. So let me begin by showing you this year's poster. And these are all 4 state employees. In fact, the one in the lower right is Tom Burns. He's actually retired and doing it. He's a fellow loaned executive. And you see the theme this year is your choice, your community, our California. And so what you see in there is that what nonprofits are all about is the vitality of not only our communities, but our entire state. So let me start with a question. Why are you here? What is it you hope to get out of today? Just a couple of comments. Somebody? Why are you here? Sir?
I want to know how to change my form.
Okay.
My form and help others make a direct donation as opposed to just a general.
Okay, thank you. He wants to learn how to change the form and help others in making their, expressing their desires. Another comment. Over here. Sir.
Hi. Well, what's the question?
Yeah, why are you here today? What brought you here today? What were you hoping to get out of today?
Just to see what's new with the all the forms and
Okay.
the key campaigners' duties.
Okay, your duties, the forms, it changes, okay. Let me ask you this. How many have done the campaign before? Okay, so less than half, so over half of you, this is your first time. Well, if I have the audacity to ask you why you are here today, then I should be able to offer up to you about why I'm here. And I'm prepared to do that. Can I tell you a little story? Is that okay? Okay. This is Georgia, AKA Mom. My 90-and-a-half-year-old mother peacefully passed away in December of 2009. I say Yoda style, in her sleep. And This week we were celebrating her 90th birthday party. And as you can see by the picture, she's quite a little party animal, even at 90 years old. And fortunately or unfortunately, shortly thereafter, she was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of dementia called dementia with Lewy bodies. And she passed in 4.5 months. But the real story was at 79 years old, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it's the one time that her age was really her benefactor. Cancer is what? It's very aggressive. It's cells run amok. And in a senior woman, everything slows down in her body. So they found the lump. It was a lumpectomy, 5 years of tamoxifen, and she lived cancer-free the remainder of her life. When she went home, a woman started calling her from a local nonprofit that dealt with the cancer issue and just started talking to her. How you doing, Georgia? You have any questions? You feeling okay today? Can we do anything for you? And they called her once a week through the duration of her recovery. And my mother was so moved by all of this that she decided she wanted to give something back. And so once a week when she was recovered, she would ride 1 to 2 buses. My mother did not drive. She was the queen of RT. She knew the bus system. She would ride 1 to 2 buses a week to go back to the same nonprofit organization and donate her time. She was a very prolific writer, so she would write thank you notes, hand to the donors and notes to the family. So my mother, who you can see was not destitute, we were middle class, she was a recipient that became a donor in her own right. And that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. As I mentioned, that nonprofits serve all of us in any way. In fact, let me just ask quickly, I told you my story. Who else in here has been touched by a nonprofit? A parent, yourself, a friend, a relative, a coworker? Yes, ma'am.
I've done work with the Junior League of Sacramento outside of work, and I feel this would be a good opportunity to give back within my work environment.
Right, so you work with a nonprofit yourself. Yes, somebody else. Yes, ma'am.
My family and I, we donate an hour of our time a month, and we go to the Union Gospel Mission, and we feed the homeless.
Very good. So you donate time and help feed the homeless. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My dad had Alzheimer's, and when he was there was like about a 5-year period where our family debated, do you think Dad has Alzheimer's? I think he has Alzheimer's, and finally one of my colleagues said, your dad has Alzheimer's, and we went to 2 different nonprofits, one the Alzheimer's AIDS Society, which was started by a guy whose wife and her family had a lot of it, and they were very good at giving us just resources of where to go and where to get help, and then
Right.
there was a nonprofit within part of the city that had a day center where he could go and spend some time. And he thought he was on the staff, and so they had him sit in on meetings and stuff like that.
It works.
It was the kind of thing where, your story was great because you never know where the help was going to come from.
Correct.
And it was, that's one of the reasons why I stay active in this is because if not for your family, if there's people who don't have family,
Absolutely.
nonprofits really help.
Thank you. So the gentleman's father who had Alzheimer's, they received services from at least three different nonprofits. And yes, and you mentioned a good point. Again, my mother was not destitute. I mean, I took very good care of her, But these women gave her a service that I couldn't. I'm not a woman, I'm not a cancer survivor, and they could speak to speak, just like with your father, They allowed him to sit on the staff, who cares? Dignity in his life, even when he was going through the challenges. So that's why we're here. So if nonprofits are such an important part of why we are here, let's talk about them for a few minutes. And then we'll get into the training. So what are the value of nonprofits? Well, they provide a niche, right, between the public sector and the private sector. I mean, we're all in the government, so we know the services that we provide. And the private sector has gotten more philanthropic, but there's still that gap between those two. That nonprofits provide just about any kind of service that you can think of, nonprofits will provide them. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing. In front of you, you have packets. You have a key campaigner manual. You have a copy of all the slides I'm going to present to you today. And then you have some sample forms we're going to go through. So I forgot to mention that when I opened. So they provided by any kind of service you can think of. Here are some really interesting statistics. I just learned these recently. There are approximately 1.6 million nonprofits in this country, and they employ 13.5 million individuals, or 10% of our workforce. Did you know that? I didn't. That's a huge piece of our economy, and that's a lot of nonprofits nationally that are providing service. Here's another kicker. Last year, nonprofits provided 8.1 billion, not million, the B word, billion hours of volunteer time. Recent statistics have shown that 1 hour of volunteer time is equal to $22.14 in value. Let's not forget the 14 cents. $22 in value. So do the math there. Last year, nonprofits provided over $170 billion in volunteer time value. That's why we're here. So what is it? What does your dollar buy when you invest in a nonprofit? For example, $5 will feed a family, feed breakfast to a family of 5 for 2 weeks. Right? That's better than Happy Meals. I won't go through all these. Here's one of my favorites. $15 a month provides one adolescent substance abuse counseling for 1 year. $15 or $225 a year. Now take this one young adolescent, this one 14-year-old teenager or 15-year-old that's going down a very destructive path and maybe bringing others with them, or may end up in who knows what situation, or even death or incarcerated. Take that same individual, invest $250, $225, $450 in this one individual that potentially could change that path into a productive adult. What's the value of this? What's the value of taking somebody that's going on a very destructive path and giving them a second chance and an opportunity to become a productive adult? I mean, it's immeasurable, right? For $225, for $450, or triple it. In your resource donor guide, there's also 2 pages in here that has a whole bunch of these sightings. And it talks about but the whole point is that a nonprofit can take $1 of input and turn it into $10, $15, $20 worth of value or output. But why is that? What is it that's so special about nonprofits? Well, there are a number of things. First of all, they tend to have a very strong mission purpose, a driving force. They're a 501c3. They're a charitable giving organization. That's why they exist. They typically have a number of volunteers, certainly at the board level or leadership level. Excuse me. And a core of volunteers that just provide any kind of service or support for the organization. They often have donors, like ourselves. They give money, they give time, they give equipment, they give resources. A lot of times, supermarkets will donate food, or other chains will give things, resources to nonprofits. Their staff members tend to be very, very committed. You know, I'm now working out of the United Way office out in Rancho Cordova, and this is my 3rd year, and I love going back there. There are all these 20 and 30-year-olds. I'm a baby boomer. And there's just all this energy and all this excitement, but there's this incredible amount of dedication to the cause, to the staff person there, and it's just so electrifying to be there. And they provide public community good. The other thing I haven't even put up here is that they're tax exempt. They do not pay corporate taxes. So that, again, that's more money as opposed to giving it to the government that can go into direct services to those communities. So that's why they deliver so much value. So in other words, the conclusion is nonprofits are a good investment. Wall Street can't guarantee you that kind of return on your investment that a nonprofit can. And that's why we're here. Does that make sense? That's why we're here. Okay, so let's talk about the actual training and what we're going to cover today. Now that we've talked about the value of nonprofits and the good that they bring and why they're a good investment, the first thing I want to talk about is why CSECC then. And why CSECC, when this is part of your job, is to communicate these things to your colleagues back in your office. Why CSECC is a great way to give to your nonprofits of your choice, if that's your desire. I'm going to give you a quick overview about the background of CSECC, but this is kind of the theme today. I'm going to make this statement, is that CSECC is an educational campaign. Let me repeat that. CSECC is an educational campaign. It is not a fundraising campaign per se. Okay, now the ultimate goal is we like people to sign up, we want people to give. But what we're asking you to do in your task is not to ask for money per se, but to run an educational campaign. Make each and every state worker aware in your area of what this program is about, what options they have, and how to exercise those options if they so choose. Does that make sense? And we'll get in now, we're going to talk and give you specific guidelines around how to run an educational campaign. I'll give you a bit of a teaser here. Can you give up 1 hour of your time to fulfill your mission? All right. I'm going to show you how in 1 hour you can fulfill this educational mission. Sound like a deal? Okay. Then we're going to talk about your roles and responsibilities. Now, some of you here have done, but over half of you haven't, so this is the first time. So for some of you that have, please bear with us. There are some new things in here. But also, if you, as we go through this, if you have a good idea or a best practice, please raise your hand. I'd like you to share that for the benefit of your colleagues who this is their first time. And trust me, it can be, remember your first time? It can be a little bit overwhelming, but it really isn't. I'm going to give you everything you need to know about how to run a good campaign. And then we're going to go through the pledge form box by box. Because one of the key things that your responsibility is, as the gentleman mentioned earlier, is to ensure the accuracy of the form. The last thing we want to have happen is somebody signs up and they put their instruction down and it gets misconstrued and it doesn't come out accurately at the other end. Not good campaign practice. And part of your role is to ensure that accuracy. We're going to talk about cash handling. There's a pretty good chance you will actually have a transference of cash and or checks during the campaign time, and we have a very specific process we'd like you to go through. It's really a two-step process to ensure that that money does get into the hands of the people that needs to get into and eventually gets to the nonprofit. And then I'm going to give you a number of resources and contact information. Not the least will be my contact information. Okay, why CSECC? Well, it allows one to express his or her passion to give. This is all about a campaign from the heart. People are going to give if it strikes a note with them. That's why I'll keep encouraging you to tell your story or tell the story of a relative or a coworker. Because when it touches somebody's heart, that's when they want to participate. It's very efficient. I call it one and done. Here is the pledge form. You fill it out once, you turn it in, it gets processed, it gets executed, and it just keeps going. I call this the Energizer Bunny, because it keeps going and going and going and going, and it doesn't stop or change or anything until you, the donor, make a change. It just rolls over year after year until you make a change. So it's one and done. And this is a very important point that you'll see mathematically in a few minutes, that payroll deduction systems blatantly, clearly, inherently yield more money to nonprofits than any other type of fundraising. Individual fundraising, check writing, episodic giving, and you'll see mathematically why this is so. And this is a key point of why CSECC is a good way to give to your nonprofits. And if you ask any nonprofit, I say nonprofits like CSECC. I really should change this to love. Nonprofits love the CSECC campaign. We just had our statewide kickoff here in Sacramento on August 21st. Did any of you attend that? Quite a few of you, yes. We had over 120 nonprofits there. That basically was free marketing for those 100. They didn't have to pay to be there. And the whole campaign is around acknowledging our nonprofits. So I'm going to encourage you when you have your sessions to invite a nonprofit in. They'll come. 10, 15 minutes, they'll tell their story. And it's a powerful way of getting the message across. And to become part of a special team of state workers. You know, we've been through the last 4 or 5 years. It's been very difficult times for all of us, but those of us at the state level, furloughs, budget cuts, etc. This is the first time we've had a full paycheck in 5 years. That we still continue to give, but now we can be part of even a bigger team in terms of supporting our communities through this campaign. Okay, so what is CSECC? Anybody know when CSECC started?
1953.
Very close. 57. Yes, 1957. I know it It's on your slide in front of you. 1957. It's 56 years old. Amazing. And so, but this is an important point because this is a state program. It's a state employee program that all of us as state employees have the right through a payroll deduction system to give to the nonprofits of our choice. And that's a key point. Just like any of our other benefits, our health benefits, we have rights to those things. So we have a right to understand what they're about. That's part of your chore, is to do that education. And includes any 501c3 in the country. Your church could be a 501c3. PTAs, the arts, community-based organizations. It's now $5 minimum to participate. For 55 years, it was a $2 minimum, right? And we can imagine what it cost to process a $2 deduction in 1957 versus 2012. So it just kind of made sense it was time to up the ante. So it is now a $5 minimum for payroll deduction and $5 minimum per organization. And as I mentioned, CSECC is truly a state employee program. And when you look at it from that perspective, your job, a big piece of your job, is just to educate your fellow employees about what this program is about and how they can participate if they choose. Now there's the asterisk there about the $2 donation. If somebody is currently, because we get asked this question, and you will get asked this question, if I'm currently giving $2 and I make absolutely no change to that, literally just roll it over, the Energizer Bunny, you can stay at $2. But when the person wants to make any kind of a change, they want to up the $2, they want to add a nonprofit, they want to change who they're giving to, any kind of change at all, that they'd have to fill out the form, it then goes to $5. $5 minimum for the payroll deduction and $5 minimum per organization. Is that clear to everyone? Is there any questions? Because that's an important, because you get people that still want to stay at the $2 they can, but absolutely no change. Once they make any kind of a change, then it goes to $5 for payroll deduction and $5 minimum per organization. Okay? So that's the grandfathering clause. The infrastructure, who runs this thing? It is the California Victims' Compensation and Government Claims Board, or Victims' Comp, that has been overseeing this campaign since 1957. They provide the oversight and set the policy for the campaign. It is a state controller, or SCO, that actually physically executes the payroll deduction. Takes some money out of your check every month. And then we have our partners at United Way, which we call Principal Combined Fund Drives, or PCFDs. This is not, and I repeat, this is not the United Way campaign. This is the California State Employees Charitable Campaign, or CSECC. United Way is simply our partner. I'm sure many of you here have contracted, any of you are contracted with some private entity to help assist you with the mission of your office? Sure. No different here. It's our campaign, but we hire the United Ways to be our partners. And in fact, it could be other groups other than United Ways. Every single year, there are 29 PCFDs on the back of the form. They are listed. They submit an application every single year to participate in this campaign, to Victims' Comp. And they have to pass muster in order to participate. So they're not a shoe-in or a lock-in, but they just do the job very well. So what do they do for us? What do we pay them to do? They are a fiscal agent. This is what they do. They manage money in the nonprofit world. They're our campaign manager. During this period that I'm off and Jeff is off, we actually have a person at United Way who's actually managing and providing leadership for this entire campaign. They distribute the funds to the designated nonprofits, and they do it very well. And finally, they do provide year-round processing and support. Even though we have this window of when the campaign is running, roughly September through October, they actually process forms. Anybody in any state employee can submit an application or change a deduction or change something year-round. It's not like our health benefits where we have an enrollment period and you've got to do it during that period. This is 12 months out of the year. It's just that the campaign sort of highlights. We pass everything out to all state employees to really kind of highlight what the program is about. But a state worker can make a change or start something 12 months out of the year. So United Way provides that processing and that support 12 months out of the year. So here's a picture. I actually drew this last year because it's kind of confusing when you talk PCFD and United Way and state controller and a nonprofit. And so I drew this to sort of follow the money. Remember, they always say, follow the money. So we have a donor, and the donor wishes to make a pledge, and he or she does that through the pledge form, which you have in front of you. If they make a payroll, there's one of two options they have. If they do a payroll deduction, then it's actually the state controller that physically removes that from your check and then forwards that money on to the designated PCFD, or United Way. The donor selects which PCFD they want to manage their money. So the state controller forwards that on every month, and then the PCFD has one of two options in terms of distribution. Either one, they will send it to the nonprofit or nonprofits, plural, as designated by the donor, or if it's not designated, it goes into the general fund of that United Way, and I'll talk to you in a minute about how those funds get dispersed or how they get expended. So that's the payroll deduction route. The person has a second, and they could do one or both, and that is a one-time donation. Sometimes an individual says, I'll write a check for $150, and that's my contribution for the year. So they write a check. The state controller is not involved because it's not a payroll deduction. That money will then go to the designated United Way. And again, it's the same thing. If the person has designated a nonprofit, then they'll disperse those funds, or it'll go to the general fund. So does that help? Kind of the picture, the players, and where the money flows? This is very important because this is an understanding of this directly correlates to the forms being filled out correctly. Okay? So we talked about undesignated funds. Where do they go? Well, they go to the selected United Way General Fund. Again, they'll pick a PCFD, but if they haven't designated to a specific nonprofit, or if they haven't designated all of their funds, if they've pulled out $25, but they've designated $20 to two nonprofits, $5 of that will go to the general fund. And they fund local programs based upon community needs. Now, this next slide, I'm going to talk specifically, and again, for those of you around the state, this is specifically the capital region. But this gives you an idea of how a United Way will actually spend the money. There are three programmatic areas: education, health, and income. And each one of these here in the capital region has a citizen council. These are called community impact programs. And they're actually citizens like us who sit on the education, the health, and income area and actually make decisions about who gets funded in these areas, because nonprofits have to submit proposals, and they monitor their progress, and they have to demonstrate that they're making an impact in the community to get continued funding. So for example, in education, we have a program here locally called Star Readers. And Jeff was mentioning, it's a startling statistic that basically from kindergarten to third grade, we're learning to read. And from fourth grade to high school, we're reading to learn. Learning to read, reading to learn. And statistics are showing that about half of our children in the Sacramento region are not reading at the fourth grade level.